and flickering phosphorescence was emitted by every object, and all appeared as a splendid masquerade. The apparel worn by these busy myriads corresponded with the ornaments on their heads. Hence, every variety of luxurious apparel was displayed upon their bodies. Kings and queens appeared arrayed in the gorgeous robes of coronation. Groups of nobility, also decorated with all the varieties of adornment, displayed themselves in the pageantry of kingly courts. Dense multitudes were visible in garments peculiar to highly advanced nations. I discovered similar groups composed of less civilized tribes who were attired in barbaric ornaments of every form. While some appeared clothed in the garments of the present day, others were in ancient attire. In the midst of all this variety, every class of spirits manifested a uniformity of external pride, pomp, and rapidly moving and dazzling luster. Sounds of mingled importance, bursts of laughter, utterances of revelry, light-hearted sport, witty ridicule, and polished sarcasm, obscene allusions, and terrible cursing broke upon my ears. These were intermixed with impure solicitations and backbiting, hollow compliments, and false congratulations, and in one fiery brilliancy they agitated my already pained and bewildered senses. As I advanced, I seemed to be walking on scorpions and treading amid living embers. The trees that seemed to wave about me were exhalations of fire, and their blossoms were the sparks and the burnings of incessant flames. Every object I approached created agony on contact. The phosphorescent glare that surrounded the various objects burned the eyes that looked upon them. The fruit burned the hand that plucked and lips that received it. The gathered flowers emitted a fiery breath, whose putrid and offensive odor caused excruciating pain when inhaled in the nostrils. The fiery atoms of the atmosphere burned as they waffled past me. The air and the blast that moved it were both burdened with disappointment and wretchedness. When I turned to see if I could discover a single drop of water to relieve my fierce and intolerable thirst, fountains appeared, and water flowed in tiny streams amid the vegetation and lay in calm and placid pools. However, I soon discovered that these bodies of water corresponded with the former illustrations, and the spray from the sparkling fountains fell like drops of molten lead upon the shrinking form. The flowing streams were like a molten river, a metallic fire that flows from a furnace heated 7 times beyond normal. And the deep, still pools were like white and waveless silver in some glowing crucible, when every atom is burning with a fierce, intolerable glow. While I was in solemn contemplation of these fearful scenes, a spirit approached me whom I had known on earth. This being appeared externally far more brilliant than it had appeared in the body. The form, the countenance, the eyes, and the hands appeared full of a metallic luster that varied with every motion and every thought. Addressing me, the spirit said, "Marietta, we meet again. You see me as a disembodied spirit in the place where those who inwardly deny the Savior find their home when their mortal days have ended. Strange emotions agitate your heart. I, too, felt the same sad and bewildered anxiety when I discovered this theater of my present existence. But I experienced what you have never yet realized in your mind. My life on earth was suddenly brought to a close, and as I departed from the world, I moved rapidly in the direction prompted by my ruling desires. I inwardly desired to be flattered, honored, and admired. I wanted to receive universal adulation and to be free to follow the perverted inclinations of my rebellious and pleasant, loving heart. I hoped for a state of existence where all would be pleasant without restraint, where each being would be free to obey the promptings of every passion, and where every indulgence would be permitted to the soul. I wanted to find a place where prayers and instructions would have no place, where the Sabbath would not be known, where no rebuke of sin would ever fall, and where existence would be spent in light-hearted and festive sports, with no superior restraining power to disturb or interfere. With these desires, I entered the spirit world and passed to the condition adapted to my inward state. I rushed to the enjoyment of the glistening scenes that you now behold. I was welcomed as you have not been, for at once I was recognized as a fitting associate by those who abode here. They do not welcome you, for they discern in you an inward desire that is opposed to the ruling passions that prevail here. I was welcomed with light-hearted and frolicsome sounds. The beings whom you behold in the distance rushed forward to embrace me. They shouted, "Welcome, welcome." I was awed, bewildered, and yet energized by the atmosphere of this abode. I found myself filled with the power of strange and restless motion. A flood of thoughts that had been latent within me burst forth and filled my mind. Every organ and every pore of my being emitted this phosphorescent illumination that formed the appearance of a brilliant crown and reflected a wild, unearthly glow on the face. As it extended, the exaltation became a flaming robe that enveloped my form and caused me to appear like the other spirits associated with me. I became conscious of a strong sensation permeating my brain. A foreign power seemed to operate through it by an absolute possession. I abandoned myself to the attractive influences that were around me, and I sought to satisfy my desires for pleasure. I reviled, I banqueted, I mingled in the wild and voluptuous dance. I plucked the shining fruit. I plunged into the fiery stream. I gluttoned my nature with whatever appeared delicious and inviting to the senses. But when tasted, all was loathing and a source of increasing pain. The desires that are perpetuated here are so unnatural that what I crave, I loathe, and what delights tortures me. My torture creates within me a strange intoxication. My appetite is satiated, yet at the same time my hunger is unappeased and unappeasable. Every object that I see, I crave, and I grasp it in the midst of disappointment and gather it with increasing agony. With every new experience, I am immersed in some unknown fantasy, delirium, and intoxication. New and strange phenomena are continually manifested and add delirium to delirium and fear to fear. I seem to have become part of what is around me, and the varied scenes that are mirrored upon the vision appear to radiate from me in 1,000 constantly changing deceptions. The voices that fall on my ears burst from me in uncontrollable utterances. I laugh, philosophize, jeer, blaspheme, and ridicule by turn. Yet every epithet, however impure, sparkles with wit, glows with metaphor, and is adorned with every rhetorical embellishment. The metallic ores, the waving trees, the shining fruit, the moving phantoms, and the diluting waters seem to form a dazzling and mocking spectacle that is ever before my eyes. Every subject of reflection has its equal in my heart. I inwardly long to satisfy my soul and my thirst, and the desire appears to create around me a tantalizing illusion of cool waters I may never drink. Grateful fruits I may never taste. Refreshing breezes I may never feel, and peaceful slumbers I may never enjoy. I know that the forms around me are fantastic and delusive, yet every object appears to hold controlling powers and to domineer with cruel enchantment over my bewildered mind. I am the slave of discordant and deceptive elements and of their preceding vices. By turn, every object attracts me. The thought of having a free mind dies with my dying will, and the idea that I am a part and an element of the revolving fantasies takes possession of my spirit. This realm, curtained with a cloud of night, is one sea of perversion and disease. Here lust, pride, hate, avarice, self-love, ambition, contention, and blasphemies revel in madness and kindle into a burning flame. And the kind of evil that does not belong to one spirit belongs to another, so that the combined strength of all the evil is the prevailing law. And this I am bound, and in it I exist. Here are those who oppress the poor, rob the employees of his wages, and bound the weary with heavy burdens. Here are the false and religious faith, the hypocrites, the adulterers, the assassin, and the suicide who, now satisfied with life in the external form, hurried its end. If mortals only knew the dark and dreadful night into which they are sure to fall, if they die unprepared, they would desire to lengthen the time of testing rather than to speed its termination, no matter how heavy their sorrow might be. They would wish to wisely improve the fleeting moments of trial on the earth. Man's weary existence is laden with grief while he walks the gloomy valleys of death and gropes along the thorny paths that mortals tread. But here, new and multiplied causes of accumulating gloom awake on all sides. The hope of peaceful and happy days in the outer world flickers like the dying flame. In this abode are ceaseless, unsatisfied, and unholy inclinations. Here in this place, the senses are infinitely more acute. What would produce only a pang with mortals enters into very elements of our existence, and the pain becomes a part of us. The consciousness and capacity of suffering here are far superior to those of human suffering. Marietta, I feel it is futile to attempt to describe our deplorable state. I often inquire, is there no hope? And my intellect replies, how can there be hope? How can harmony exist in the very midst of discord? We were warned of the consequences of our course while in the body, but we loved our ways better than those that exalted the soul. We have fallen into this fearful abode. We have brought about our own sorrow. God is just. He is good. We know that we do not suffer from a vindictive law of our Creator, our violation of the moral law by which our moral natures should have been preserved in harmony and health is the prime cause of our state. O sin, you parent of countless woes, you insidious enemy of peace and heaven, why do mortals love your ways? Here she paused and focused her eyes, wild with despair, upon me. I shrank from the dreadful, piercing look, for her appearance manifested inexpressible torture. A vital warning. While she was addressing me, a multitude of forlorn beings were moving around her, striving to suppress their true feelings while listening to her tell the reality of their sufferings. Their appearance, her address, and the scene that was before me filled me with horror, and I sought to escape. When she saw that I desired to flee, her grief appeared to deepen, and she hastily said, "No, Marietta, do not leave me. Can you not endure for a short period the sight and story of what I am continually suffering? Tarry with me, for I desire to speak of many things." Do you shrink back at these scenes? Know then that all that moves around you is only the outer degree of deeper woe. Marietta, no good and happy being abides with us. Everything within is dark. We sometimes dare to hope for redemption, still remembering the story of redeeming love, and inquire, can that love penetrate this abode of gloom and dark? May we ever hope to be made free from the desires and inclinations that bind us like chains, and the passions that burn like consuming fires in the unholy elements of this world of wretchedness? Overcome by her deep feelings, she then yielded to the expression of grief, and I heard her speak no more. Just then, another spirit drew near, addressing me. This spirit said, "Go, leave us to our lot. Your presence gives us pain, since it revives active memories of lost opportunities." Here the spirit paused a moment, then continued, "No, wait," prompted by a cause unknown to me. "I want you to hear what we have learned here about the power and influence of evil on the spirit of man. Though evil is exceedingly subtle while man inhabits the body of clay, it forms the external sphere of his existence when his spirit leaves the outer world and enters the spiritual world. Here where we abide, evil is our outward dwelling. It arises from the deep. It unfolds from the soul. It encompasses all, pervades all, controls and inspires all. Mortals are opposed to this truth. From the love and goodness of God, they reason that there cannot be suffering in the spiritual realm. But this kind of reasoning must conclude that God also desires evil, since evil and suffering exist with mankind in the outer world and also prevail with us. The cause of this is obvious, and yet men seek to reject the principle. When man disturbs or prevents the harmony of God's law, evil consequences ensue, and man produces an effect contrary to what was prescribed for him. Therefore, what was intended to lead to life, or should have perfected him, now leads to death. Thus, sin, or the violation of God's law, disqualifies him from proper development. Being removed from harmony, the violator ceases to exist in the law of peace and holy development. This great and irrevocable truth is seen every time that God's laws are opposed. Why will mortals not use reason and recognize the results of their actions? By preventing the growth of evil and by cleaving to God. Through heaven-appointed means, they could escape these fearful consequences. Marietta, you are not one of us, or else these elements would have enveloped your being and absorbed your life already. But you will return to realms of peace. Madness and delirium arise and rage within us upon hearing of places where love, pure love, and peace abide. You are thus addressed because of your return to earth. Tell the inhabitants of earth what you have seen, and warn them of the danger awaiting those who persist in the gratification of impure desires. One hideous expression closed the scene as I was removed from it. I was overcome by what I had seen, knowing it was so real. I had known those spirits on earth, and when I saw them there, I knew them still, but how changed. They were now the very embodiment of sorrow and remorse. How ardently I desired that they might escape, become pure, and receive an inheritance with those blessed spirits I had visited in the paradise of peace. Chapter 8, Address of the False Philosopher. During these reflections, I unconsciously passed from that sphere of gloom to a region where I could perceive nothing but lonely space. No sun or stars were visible to my sight. Dense darkness closed around me, and I felt that my doom was sealed, and that I would soon become the companion of spirits in those fantastic realms. When I began to agonize beneath the idea of departing hope, I heard a voice from the distance say, in tones soft and with melody, "Look unto Jesus. He is the life of the soul." A feeling immediately arose within me in rebellion to the idea of adoring Jesus who was crucified. But suddenly, all that seemed to sustain me departed, and again I descended as from an immeasurable height into an abyss inhabited by beings more desperate than those from whom I had just escaped. They gathered around me and commended me for the doubt I had entertained concerning the divinity of the Son of God. Then a spirit of great intellect approached me and said, "Religion? The religion of the Bible, so much revered by many who live in darkness and are undeveloped, is but a spiritual farce. The God of the Bible, whom Christians call the Savior of the world, is only a man. Religious faith limits the range of human thought, betters the noble intellect, and prevents the progression of the race. Those you have just visited are a group of spirits who, blinded by the delusive dreams of Earth's religionists, have entered the spirit world without having progressed. Hence, they still cling to the idea of redemption through Christ. They appear to suffer, but their suffering is just imaginary. Before long, light will reach them. Then they will discover the foolishness of their religious education, to which they cleave with insatiable desire, though they discarded it with their better beings. We are free. Our intellects roam unrestrained, and we behold the magnificence and the glory of the people universe. We enjoy the rich productions of the mind. In this way, not by the religion of the cross, we arise into the more exalted spheres of intellectual attainments and the moving grandeur of terrestrial things. Marietta, we saw you when darkness overshadowed you. We understood that because of the way you were educated, you would have offered prayer for salvation in the name of Jesus. We heard the voice that spoke from above you saying, "Look to Jesus." That voice did not save you. Learn then that salvation comes from the natural progress of your being and your mind. What do you see, Marietta? Abandon your thoughts of the empty religion of the Bible, and behold the wonders of this sphere of existence. Around you gather minds from the varied spheres of earth. Minds whose intellectual strengths could not yield to the force of an imaginary religion. They were not awed into reverence by the priestly garb, nor did they sing the idle notes of psalmistry, the heartless music of the church. Instead, these minds sing of nature, of which they are a noble part. Thus united, they ascend the octave of progressive harmony of the mind. Just then the spirit addressing me became greatly annoyed, and the nebulous appearance that encompassed him was agitated by successive shocks, which caused his whole being to convulse and wither beneath its influence. I could not perceive their origin, and I was greatly terrified. The whole scene changed at every successive shock, which was accompanied by flashes of pale light playing upon the cloud-like form that enveloped him. I could also perceive that he was intensely struggling to overcome some power that was about to control him. All his energy was exerted to its highest capacity to roll back the tide that was overwhelming him. Suddenly he groaned with the bitterness of one sinking into the irremediable despair, and then he yielded to the intrusive influence. A vast arena then opened to my view, in which I saw at one glance every imaginable kind of vice, human society, government, organization, in all the varied phases and forms of worship, in every kind of religion. I saw everyone from the heathen to the fashionable church-going people who heartlessly worship under the name of the holy religion of the cross. scene opens, I heard a voice from far above me saying, "Marietta, do not fear." Here you see a pandemonium where the self-deceived congregate, along with hopers in false philosophy, together with the despisers of God. The false religions of earth also arise here in supernatural form. Hypocrisy unveils its hideous shapes, and religious mockery speaks in its own language. Human wolves, who appeared in sheep's clothing, are exhibited here so that they might indulge their avarice upon the humble and unsuspecting. Listen, hear the wild chant that breaks from the thousands who sit in the galleries of song. They once sang, heartlessly sang, hymns dedicated to the worship of the living God. Listen to the hoarse voice of the heavy organ before which they congregated. Watch them arise, observe their manner, and seek to understand what they are saying. No one can ever know the reality of such a scene except those who personally behold it. I am only able to say that every evil scheme that prevails with man appeared to be organized and moving perfectly in this scene. Each spirit was an actor performing the part that he had cultivated while in the body. All of them struggling in vain to obtain enjoyment, which from its dreadful fantasy recoiled upon the suffering soul with inexpressible horror. As I looked upon them, the occupants of the broad galleries arose and began to sing. As they sang, the hoarse voice of the organ jarred. A note after note of their attempted music fell from lips whose very accents mocked the effort.